This time we're looking at gas for power and industrialization, opportunities for regional and state power generation and industrialization. And to help us drive the conversation, I would welcome our panelists. First off, I'd like to welcome the Managing Director and CEO of Ibrahim Power Company Limited. Let's welcome Engineer Kamilu Sumo. He's on our panel. A round of applause, please, as he makes his way to take his seat. Joining him is the Director, Economic Regulation Division for Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. Let's welcome Mr. Abba Ibrahim Terab. You are welcome on to your seat on the panel. You know, the first one there. This one, yes. Terab, please proceed to his immediate right. Thank you very much. Joining them is the General Manager Commercial, Renaissance Africa Energy Company Limited, Mrs. Olufunto Anam. Representing her is Yewande Apampa. Yewande, you are welcome to your seat on the panel.
And welcome, my distinguished panelists. This panel is here to discuss gas for power industrialization, opportunities for regional state power generation and industrialization. I think obviously it's a known fact that you need energy. In this case, electricity or electric energy to power industrialization. In our country, especially in the South-South, we have the key feedstock to generating electricity in abundance, and that is natural gas. I don't need to go back, go to the statistics. I think the previous presenters have already done justice to that. Now, there are other sources of generating electricity, solar, hydropower, but thermal energy gives you the base load and reliability you need to power economic growth. And that is what we have in abundance. But over the years, we've really fallen short of generating the necessary capacity we need. So what we will try to do here is to have a discussion, not just on the reasons, but more importantly, proffer solutions that are actionable. So let me delve right into it. Since we are in Akwa Ibom State, let me start with the Managing Director of Ibom Power. So the question is, what is required, since you are a practitioner and you are an operator? So, given the constraints you've faced, what, in your view, is required to unlock the national power generation requirements for our country?
Thanks very much. Thanks, Mr. Facilitator, Moderator. Thank you, EBP. Firstly, I must state that in the present situation we are with respect to power, I think it's a big issue. I won't want to call it a problem, I'll call it a challenge. And because it's a natural challenge, I think the first step is at the level of the presidency to declare a national emergency on power. Why is this necessary? This is necessary because, like Ed talked about the decade of gas, power is an enabler. Without power, there can be no development, there can be no economic development. When I go into Ministry of Power and now Ibom Power, I told myself that power is a condition precedent for development. And so to that extent, we need an effective presidential declaration of emergency with all the enabling executive orders to allow things happen. A presidential emergency declaration that will show that really we mean to tackle the situation of power as we see it. Just last week, I think I like what happened in the National Assembly. The Senate actually passed a bill, an amendment to EA 2023. And by the way, EA 2023 is the Electricity Act of 2023. And what did he propose? He proposed clear consequence management for vandalization and energy theft. Because that's one of the big problems that's happening in the power space. I mean, you can't have a situation where with the little financing you have, and by the way, funding has different challenges, funding has different ways to go and all that. You actually vandalize that. In Akwa Ibom, I call it the final effort. And then also, I tell people this. The power challenge in Nigeria, because power is an ecosystem. You have a generation, you have transmission, you have distribution, and you have the last mile user. So there's no silver bullet solution to this. There must be an amalgam, a bucket of solutions that actually addresses the power situation the way it is. And one of the biggest problems, which has been much shouted about is in Delhi, in the media, is the big debt liquidity problem. As at end of March, the quoted published figure is 5.2 trillion naira. And that's only as at the end of March. This is actually commitment by government to pay on behalf of users and last mile users in the name of subsidy, 5.2 trillion naira. Let me put it in context. This translates to $3.5 billion. You can imagine owing a sector $3.5 billion. Can you imagine the situation in Nigeria? How does that translate? One of our sector peer competitors is being owed 750 billion naira. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine what that does to our system. The second issue is, and why do we have this backlog of debt? Why do we have this backlog of a problem? We have this backlog of a problem because there is a subsidy regime, there's a subsidy situation that the government has committed to. Why? Because up to now, power is being seen as a social utility service, whereas it actually is an investment that people who are playing in that space, they need a return on investment in that, to that investment they've done. And therefore, the government needs to stand up because, by the way, this 5.2 trillion is unfortunately not cash back. We only had a 900 billion allocation in the budget for it. And when we say so, the government needs to make a socio-political stand and say, look, we are not able to chest out. It has a lot of implications for the socio-political environment. But then government needs to stand up. I'm sorry the minister is not here. But again, this is a story that as a power sector player, we've consistently said it to government. There needs to be a political way to chest out and tell people, yes, we made this commitment. Power is no longer, electricity is no longer the social utility service that it used to be. It is actually now an investment that the players in the space need to have this. And then the other stuff is, I mean, we're talking about, what are all the issues in power. There has to be some element of backward integration. No single player in the power space, call it generation, call it transmission, call it distribution, can tackle this problem alone. There has to be a holistic approach. And because there has to be a holistic approach, each interface point, each boundary is an inefficiency point. And therefore, players are encouraged, and seriously too, to do some element of vertical backward integration. Whether it's forward or backward, because we need gas for power, you talk about the thermal generation and all that. Whether it's forward integration, you talk of the meters and all that. We have a company that's seeing the problem because the ecosystem is in such a way that the performance of the least player in that ecosystem is what the entire ecosystem is profiled and identified with. So one of the players who actually has some big liquidity, a big fund chest, saying that transmission was a problem, has decided to go into transmission and is actually having a smooth flow. And then the other issue is that we're talking about liquidity and all that. Man, get the banks, make it sufficiently attractive and incentivized enough to call the guys that know how to handle money, the bankers. I call them the money house. Let them to be involved and all that. And in any case, the other issue is we're having situations where when we generate the power, transmit it, distribute it, and then money gets paid. It gets warehoused, and I'm sure Johnson is not going to like this. It gets warehoused at embed. It stays a time. There's a tenure for which it is paid. Why change a winning team? We've tried the pay-as-you-go mechanism in the GCEO market, and it's worked. Let's have a situation where each person is switching on a bulb. As you're putting on your jug or your heater in your house, that money hits all the players in the sharing formula that is being proud agreed to. That way we have an immediacy of we don't have a residency of fund, we have an immediacy of credit, we have an immediacy of cash flow so that players can do what they need to do. Again, because I've talked of a presidential stock, we need to bring in people, we need to have space, we need to have money that should support the players, called transmission, called generation, to be able to buy space. 80-90% of all the parts, of all the parts consumables that we use in the power sector are actually imported. And therefore, there has to be a complete standalone CBN presidential order to enable these spares importation to be supported. Whether you call it a going CBN rate or add some element of subsidiary rate. Again, we have all sorts of machines in the power space, in generation space. We've got Siemens, we've got GE, all sorts of stuff. This does not allow in-country capacity building. We need to build capacity. And you build capacity when you have some element of customization and standardization. Therefore, there has to be some encouragement by people, by the government, to enable the players to come together and standardize that unit. And therefore, so you can have in-country inventory holding space, so that players, generation companies can go to that and reduce the circle traffic time to order for a material from US, order for a material Siemens, or order from Europe. So that lead time, that's the circle time gets substantially. I think I'd like to just take a backtrack on this.
You raised quite a few policy issues. I was going to come back to you on the Electricity Act, but in the interest of time, let's go around first. Then I'll come back to you. Let's go on the policy front. And this question is for NERC, and NBET can weigh in on this. In fact, it's the question for both of you. What state-level policy instruments, can accelerate gas-to-power rollout in the country?
Thank you very much. With the advent of the Electricity Act 2023, that devolves regulatory powers to states also to involve in regulating electricity generation, transmission, and distribution, quite a lot of policies from the state level can be done. I mean, as we speak, on average, for the past 3 years, the average supply of energy to the whole of the South-South just hovers around 500 to 600 megawatt hour per hour for a population of nearly 30 million people. So it's obvious the supply is inadequate. There are opportunities for the state governments to come up with policies in partnership with federal government to encourage embedded and integrated distributed supply of electricity. And fortunate in the South-South that we have abundance of gas, which we have not even started to scratch the surface. That is the cheapest and most sustainable in terms of long-term, most reliable supply that can power a number of our industries and commercial operations within the South-South. So it's good to come up with policies that will ensure bankable projects where investors can come in and invest and have clarity regarding recovery of their investment, and then also future operating costs, so that these investments can be done. When the power sector reform started at the national level, the agency, our colleague here, NBET, was created because at the interim, you don't have bankable off-takers. So states need to see whether to individually as states or come together as South-South states to see, okay, whether do we need a bankable off-taker to set up a bulk trader, or we have to support in partnership the distribution companies within the states to be a reliable off-taker in the interim to start. As tariff goes cost-reflective and the industry becomes self-sustaining, then you will withdraw such support in terms of the bankability. But as of now, we need that level of investment. Also key to the point is that we need to de-risk the investment for gas to power and then also for the power itself, because there are competing technologies coming. So if you invest in gas in an efficient way, that the gas itself, which is a primary input to power generation, nearly about 50% of the cost, if it comes at the most cost-effective way, it means it will be attractive for businesses to thrive under power from gas to power. But where we allow it to be funded purely by corporate finance, which may be coming at a higher cost, then the long term in terms of passing the cost to customers will be an issue. So there has to be a scheme to ensure that we have long-term financing provided to investors in the gas to power sector, as well as support for offtake to the distribution companies, so that they can now offtake power, and then assurance in terms of policy for cost reflectivity or revenue recovery for players in the industry. Because if the system cannot pay itself, No matter how we preach to say, okay, we want players to come in, it will not come up. We also need to avoid this individual investment because it's coming at a higher cost. If each company or industry or commercial outfit will build their gas to power, you have excess capacity, but you are not operating efficiently. So you would need consolidated, large-scale, utility-scale supply where the capacities can be optimized. And where there's excess within the South-South, you can export to other regions of the country and even export outside Nigeria. So I think it's important to set up such policies to ensure cost reflectivity in terms of recovery for gas costs as well as cost of electricity, and then long-term financing instruments, whether coming as partnership, joint venture between all the states in the South-South or individually to guarantee offtake and bankability of contracts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, if you want to add to that.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and indeed a pleasure to be part of this very good conversation around furthering the prospects of the gas and then the power sector in general. To add to what Abba has said, spoken about policies for the state, I think I would say the Electricity Act 2023 opened up the space for state government's involvement, and Akwa Ibom State has a head start, already being in the generation business. And the state and other states within the South-South can leverage on the opportunities of the Electricity Act 2023 to put in place policies that would incentivize investment, incentivize private sector investment, working with the state government. And some of this policy would include specific policy on gas infrastructure and right-of-way for private sector investment to bring down the charges for right-of-way and the cost for right-of-way for gas companies coming to invest in gas pipelines and gas processing within the state. Another specific policy that the states can put in place is specific policy on embedded generation and licensing, and maybe have a kind of one-stop agency where investors can come and sort out all the licensing requirements timely so that they can get down to business. Another policy the states or the region can put in place specific policies to birth and guarantee offtake of gas. So that will be in having incentives and investing in industrial clusters where you have industrial park that guarantees offtake of gas and of power. That would incentivize investment because investors see a line of sight for recouping their investment over time. Also, allied to what the previous panel has spoken about, the presidential order of March 2023, which created a lot of incentive in non-gas investment, non-associated gas investment. States within the South-South region can also put in place policies around fiscal incentives for investors to find it attractive to come and make investment, essentially setting waivers on lease or land, waivers of certain charges and that are required to be made by investors coming into the state, and also potentially going into private-public partnership. Also, state government taking the first loss mechanism in the investment, first loss. So states can also put in place performance-driven grants that are linked to performance for investors that are coming in and to invest in the gas to power business or gas for use within industries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Talk about credible offtake arrangements, to encourage investors to come in. Let me come to you, NGPIS. You do strategic investments in gas infrastructure. How can states bundle, industrial cluster demand to offer bankable opportunities for investments?
Okay.
And from your experience, what do you look for when you do those strategic investments?
Thank you very much. Once again, good afternoon to the audience. Thank you, and Power. I'm standing here on behalf of Dr. Sali Ujamari. So if I answer correctly, I attribute it to him. If I didn't get it very well, attribute that to me. Thank you very much. So just speaking your question from where Mr. Abba anchored it, he actually made reference which looks to about 30 million people within the South-South region, consuming only 500 megawatts. That is critically very low when you look at the power per capita within the state. And there is a direct correlation between per capita and economic development. There is direct relationship. So where you have very low per capita, there will be stunted growth within that region. And so I would start by saying, first thing that this particular business creates is an opportunity for the South-South region. They could leverage the competitive advantage they have by having the cluster of gas network just within the proximity of the island. And what they do, there will be need within the South-South region to collaborate first in gas utilization. An IJV could be formed, or a form of SPV could be formed to invest on gas utilization or gas to power. They have that advantage. This era that, we have exited subsidy, and then subsidy has gone. So we have more money coming to the state. So it is an opportunity for the state not only to consume that quantum of money that is coming in now, but to look at strategic investment. And one of it is this gas utilization, and also leveraging, the presidential order that allows a form of incentives to not associated gas developers, as well as the incentives around it. So they could leverage that. And if you look at 3 orders by the it's actually to enable investment in the power sector. So it will be an opportunity in that area to leverage that. So another opportunity that the states within the South region can also look at is the electricity infrastructure. There is nothing that stops states forming under the IJV or joint venture trying to develop power, starting from power generation to transmission and to distribution. And now that looks at how the state will galvanize resources. Because in this industry, nobody wins it all. 2 heads are better than 1. So the states within can galvanize resources, put it together, and like my brother, the CEO of Embed said, is also opportunity to start taking up that risk at the very front end. Because if the investment is catalyzed by regional body or regional strength, when investors are coming, they will come at a premium, and it could be 1.5x or whatever is the investment that is committed. So that gives that advantage. That needs to be leveraged. Another important advantage I look at is the Electricity Act that has been passed, which is that of 2023. Mr. Abba alluded to it, is also an opportunity for the state because it gives room for collaboration, it gives room for technical know-how transfer, where, like what we do and what we believe in, this industry needs to be de-risked. You don't have to do a solo kind of investment. Under the joint venture, it will be de-risked. And then you will have opportunity to bring in investors that have both the technical and the financial wherewithal to support what you are doing within the industry. And that will help, first of all, to allow a minimal resources that is available to the state to be well utilized in investing in power generation. I think another point is the opportunity to have, like EVP when he was talking about, he talked about, the opportunity, he talked about the issue around the community helping to safeguard the infrastructure. Is another opportunity that is created that will be created within this kind of value chain where the states around the infrastructure within the state, either an underpinning regulation and underpinning law, the communities will form a vigilante system to make sure that those infrastructures are secured and safe to guarantee energy security and energy realization. And one important aspect that we might look at is attracting investment. Many people will want to put their investment where it is safe. So with regional body coming together and investing in infrastructure, investing in the transmission line, investing in the distribution line, and also investing in the generating systems, it will give what I feel a conducive environment for third parties to come for investment, to come in with their investment, and at the end of the day, that could create a kind of wider room that will enhance energy security, brings return to the state as a whole, and also ensure that along the line, the people who are the final beneficiaries are having more power per capita than currently what we have. So leveraging the competitive advantage within the South-South region is a very key, especially now that we are talking of the quantum of FID that are being catalyzed within the system. Thank you very much.
Yeah, please go ahead and touch on it. Then I'll come to you, Yewande.
Okay, maybe just for the clarification of the House. Yes, Terab as well talked about the EA and all that. It provides opportunity for states to play. But the point needs to be clearly made that power is a utility service. And because it's a utility service, you need the numbers. The numbers will allow you to bring in the benefits of scale economies. And so while people say ease of business, ease of entry and all that, I call it ease of play. The states must be flexible enough to allow partnership and handshake across geographical boundaries so that there shall be that element of entrenched and known hitherto collaboration. Because if you don't collaborate, issues about standardization, issues about joint sharing, issues about O&M for your unit will go down. And the smaller level you play, the most suboptimal and inefficient you become. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment. So it's a game of scale.
Yep.
Yeah. And actually, to use an analogy, when you do simple cycle for those in the power sector, you see their heat rate is much higher. And your cost of production is usually higher than when you're doing a combined cycle. That's a simple example of how scale, plays into what he just said. Yewande, let me come to you, since you play across the gas value chain. From your perspective, what moribund industries do you think, could be revived, fastest from switching to gas?
Thank you. So really, just to echo before I go on, is to say that a lot of things have been said about infrastructure and being ready to take the gas. The EVP had talked about, if the South-South region was ready to take all of those volumes and to take all of that energy that will come in. It's important to say that we need to look at the numbers. There's an African proverb that says, one hand doesn't carry the load on the head. Need to look at the numbers that come with gas infrastructure. There are millions and millions and billions of dollars. So collaboration is really key in the region to ensure that the needed infrastructure for interconnectivity is put in place. I do not speak to the amount of cash available to each of the states, but I think if they come together, then you begin to see a greater inroad into more development and more industries coming up very quickly. So I'll speak to a few of those kind of moribund industries. We all know that at the time we used to do all of our textiles. A lot of the textile industries were actually in the South-South. And you see that because of lack of power and lack of infrastructure, a lot of those companies have gone down. I know that in Abba it was a large textile hub, even though it's not in the South-South per se, but if there's collaboration and there's excess power, like Abba was saying, you can easily export it to that kind of region, and you then begin to see an upkick in the amount of people doing different things. Even in the industry and the infrastructure business, you see that even individuals begin to have jobs. We look at the ceramics industry. I know that in Calabar, the region, there used to be a really growing ceramic industry, but that has also gone down. If there's enough power, then you begin to see a development in all of those industries. I was speaking with Ibrahim of NERC earlier on, and we're talking about, that the steel company that used to be in Aqua Ibom, that by just using the power or the energy from, I can't remember how we described it, from the Ibom power, you don't need gas as it were, just some thermal heat will be able to revamp all of those moribund industries very quickly. But in saying that, I was saying, revamp these moribund industries, you need to think about capacity. Do you have enough people with enough knowledge and capacity to do the work and to do the jobs that will be created? So it then behoves on the South-South leadership to then begin to train the young people to say, how do you fabricate things? How do you learn how to build plants, and really technical skills? And then that comes into place where you begin to have a connection with all the technical colleges so that you have real marketable skills in the populace. So you don't have an industry and you don't have people you're employing. And then the whole issue that Mr. Ed Ubong spoke about the GDP increasing in the region then becomes of no effect, because if you're bringing in people to do the work that the people of the state could do, then it's of no effect. So I think it's important that everything ties in together as one. It's not one size fits all, but to work together properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're out of time. But one thing seems certain and very clear, that collaboration amongst the South-South states is very critical, so that they have the resources. They can collectively invest in the infrastructure that is needed to make this gas to power a reality. So let me thank GSEN and NNPC for this opportunity.